we jump into it? Okay, we're going to throw it all on you.
Throw it all on me?
It's going to be your show. Are we ready?
No, not my show.
Oh, we're live? Oh, hey everybody, it's Uncle Grumpy. I'm sorry, I didn't know we were live yet. Really, I didn't. Welcome to Grumpy tonight. As you can see, I'm here with our friends Julie Ezell and Norma Sapp. Both of you, thank you for coming. We're going to talk about what's going on with legislation, as we always do. Before we get started, as always, I want to thank the sponsors, starting with Moto here at the bunker for doing the camera work and putting all this together and providing us with the studio, and the Greens Bakery in Oklahoma City, Sweet Leaf Dispensary and Health Clinic in Bartlesville, Max's Garage in downtown Muskogee, which is a restaurant and a bar, and of course Canna Law Group, which is Julie's half of Canna Law Group right here. So folks, how's it going?
Pretty good. Well. Doing well. It's been an exciting week. How's it?
Yeah. What you just ran in the door. Did you get a chance to go over any of this before today?
I did. I've read all of these bills. I had previously read all of these bills and also looked in the hot topic that we're hearing about, the marijuana stamps. Have you guys heard topic of that?
We've heard about this now. I made some phone calls on the drive here trying to confirm this with the sheriff's department in the counties where it was, in the area where it was supposed to be, and haven't heard anything. They've said they don't know. It was the city of Muskogee, their police department said it was, or McAllister said it was the county. The county is Pittsburgh County. They said it was the city. So I haven't gotten any farther than that yet, and I just got that on the way here.
Have you heard of anybody being required to have these stamps?
Not since the passage. Now, what she's referring to, those that don't know it, unfortunately I forgot my prop. I actually have a couple of these that Norma and I went and bought last year. When this passed, before this passed, we had a tax stamp. Julie, you worked for the tax
commission. I did
for a while, did you not? So would you just explain the tax stamps for all the drugs that were illegal? There it is.
Yeah, well, it's easiest to equate to what people might be most familiar with is the tax stamp you see on the bottom of cigarettes, and that just shows that the proper tax has been remitted to the tax commission, and those are legal stamps. There's a statute in place that levies a tax on any Schedule 1 through 4 substance that's illegally grown, produced, or whatever outside of state law, and they would require you to have a marijuana stamp on it, which, of course, not very many of those were issued because marijuana used to be illegal, and that would out people as violating law. I've heard, just some rumblings that, I don't know if it's McAllister, but somewhere, is starting to talk about, you've got to pay these marijuana stamps, and I want to say it's like $3 per gram or something?
It's $10 per 1.5 grams, so it's 43 something, I think, for a quarter bag.
But again, like a plain reading of the statute says that it is only for Schedule 1 through 4 substances that are procured, manufactured, grown, whatever, illegally, which this program is fully legal under state law, so this should not be something that should be levied.
As soon as we voted in 788.
Absolutely.
But is this not another case of law enforcement using a technicality to continue to inflict?
I think it absolutely is, but it's not even a technicality. It plainly says in the statute when those drugs are procured, grown, received, whatever, in violation of state law. This program is not in violation of state law, and so, in my opinion, they don't have a leg to stand on.
Doesn't that law though have to be repealed?
Well, it still would apply to other Schedule 1 through 4 substances that
So the law doesn't need to be repealed.
It needs to be clarified to exempt marijuana from it now that marijuana is legal at the state level.
And we possibly have a few law enforcement using that for...
Yeah, trying to scare people or shut it down and get more revenue. I mean, it's the same thing we've seen over and over again.
I had seen a post somewhere, somebody had said not to drive through a county with a 788 sticker. Or you were guaranteed to get, I don't know if this was someone's opinion or if the sheriff had made this clear, but we've still got a few counties and cities that are hanging on to the old ways.
Not happy with the current events, and such as the McCurtain County.
Which one is that? What are
McCurtain
they?
County is the one where they went and harassed this lady for 3 hours, who's a legal grower and a legal patient. And then I think that the charges they brought up now are they took a propane bottle or a butane bottle and her magic butter machine. And so
I heard about this
maybe
one.
maybe they're thinking that she's going to be prosecuted for not having a processor's license or something.
Right, yeah.
But
Didn't they get it for some
anyway.
paraphernalia too?
Oh, I didn't see that.
I mean, I would think that if she has a patient license, though, she would have paraphernalia.
You would
Probably
think.
But they also, I think, which was a little more extreme, took, like 3 cell phones.
Yes.
And they took a lot of property that really had nothing to do with it, which to me tells me once they got there, they realized whatever information they had was bad. Let's try to grab these phones and whatever else we can and see if we can trump up some charges
Yes,
here. Because she wasn't doing anything illegal. She had the butane. She wasn't using it to process. She had it for something wholly different based
Like
upon what I
perhaps
read.
her charcoaler or
Yeah, something like that.
heater?
Right, and she had her grow license and she had a patient license. She was not doing anything wrong. So.
Just goes to show you they don't know how to really practice law, enforcing laws. They've been so used and addicted to doing a certain thing. I can catch 50% of the people on the road with something illegal, and so that's how we get started, and that's how we make money.
Well, you're absolutely right, Norma, and it's, not only are they not properly educated, they still have reefer madness. This is bad
Right.
in their minds, and
It's
they're
a
trying
real
to do
disease. Yes.
anything they can in harassing law-abiding citizens.
Norma, you probably hear from more people in this situation than we do. Is this worse than it was before as far as little towns going after people, or is it now we're targets now that they have our information?
I think it's calmed down a lot. Now, of course, people point out things now that they believe are wholly legal, and so they're really outraged when they get arrested or slowed down. See, I think we've still got a couple of suits in cities that said, that they didn't want their business, they didn't want cannabis business there, and of course they can't do that. Even with 2612, it's, telling them they can't do that, and they're still not backing off.
Somebody told me this morning that they're getting bombarded with, since they have a business license, they're getting bombarded with sales information from the list that was put out. Remember when the health department leaked that list? Mm-hmm. They're getting not only their emails full, but they're also receiving paper mail at home from businesses, from actual advertisements, from it was consulting. It was from cannabis consulting businesses have managed to get a hold of that list because it's public information. Not only did they put it out on the internet for a short time, but you can request it anyway.
Yeah, you can still request it, and don't they still have on the website they have the names of all commercial license holders, but not the addresses, and so, somebody could even just with the name go and Google the address, but
Go to
having
Facebook.
that list with it all right there, just, and it really, to me, is concerning to have it published. I agree, it's an open record, the public's entitled to it, but to have it published, you're really putting people in danger.
Kind of are.
Because so many, marijuana businesses cannot bank with a traditional banking account. They tend to have a lot of cash on them. And, publishing that address right there, is just, big green dollar signs, come rob me. It's not a judgment.
Well, I know, look, they've managed to slowly leak information out, and now with some of these bills, they've suggested they keep more information at the health department. Where do you see this heading? Because what I see eventually is a list of all of our names ending up on the internet.
Well, I mean, that would not surprise me. It would surprise me if it was intentionally done, but if you go, there's a statewide agency that runs all of the IT of all state agencies, and if you go look at the number of breaches that have been made to state servers just in the last year, I think the most recent one was it was either the banking department or the insurance department, and so them having that type of information on a system that just isn't, it's the same OMES state agency that just asked for was it a $16 million supplemental appropriation?
Yes.
And so, the safety of that data is very much in question.
Not good. Not good at all. Norma, did we not spend a great deal of time before this passed talking about that 24-digit code and privacy? I mean...
Yes, it was understood that would be searchable under that number, but not by any old law enforcement or whoever to go in there and search for your name and find your number. And by the way, a couple of days ago, somebody mentioned that I don't know how they would find out, but they found out under their number that someone had been sold some, what do you call it, the little plants when they're... Clones. Had sold some clones under his number, and he doesn't do that. He's only just been a patient at dispensaries. So something's up.
That's not good.
No, it isn't.
Not good.
How is that possible unless... Because the dispensaries have your number when you register and go in there.
Right.
Could they actually use that and make it look like something they're diverting, make it look like it came from you? I don't know.
A lot of the dispensaries, when customers come in, they ask you for your phone number, but a lot of them also store that 24 digits, so the next time you come in, they don't actually have to scan your card or ask to see it. And so that's a potential issue. But another issue is when people submit their patient licenses through MMA, once it's approved, they get an email back that has the patient, that 24-digit code on there. And we all know how susceptible email is to being intercepted and hacking.
Yeah.
And so I've already heard of one patient who's, they got that email, a relative, not, a nefarious relative got into their email, printed that email, and then took it to a dispensary. And you're not supposed to be able to, you're supposed to have your code, you're not supposed to be able to fill with your paper with the number on it. And so this relative took the paper with the code on there and, was dispensed medication, and they also didn't ask to see the driver's license. And so that really is a security concern.
Oh, and guess what? People have been warned not to put their card when they get it on Facebook or
yes,
online.
And you see.
Well, guess what? A Nigerian is selling a certain lady's card. If you just send them $140, of course you never get any card.
Yeah.
They used her card as an example of this is what you can get for $140.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, there was hundreds of people who have and still continue to post that sort of stuff.
And one little thing I wanted to say regarding why those emails are sent. 788 gives the health department 14 calendar days to reject or deny a patient application. And so they send that email and call that their acceptance. We have many people who are getting the emails, but they're not getting the actual card, which it's the actual card that you can purchase your medicine with until 2, 3, 4 weeks later. And so there really isn't compliance with the law. Because if you're accepted, you should have the card that allows you to go buy your medicine.
Now, does the law actually state that? That you have to have the card? And here's why I'm asking. Because I've heard just in the last few days that some people have called the OMMA and they've changed their stance on this. And they've said they'll allow them to use that email.
Well, so...
Provided they also have a picture ID. And I've said this before, I'll say it again real quick. There's no reason they need to scan your driver's license. If they're scanning your driver's license, it was a waste of time to come up with that 24-digit code. So if you want to use your driver's license, you can let them look at it. They don't need to scan it.
My understanding of the rules, and I'm trying to pull them up right now while one of my kids is texting me about dinner, is that you...
Dinner's going to be late, son.
Dinner's not happening. Go have some Skittles. That's what you get from Mom tonight. Is that the rules require that card to be present. I have a client that I visited with just last week where OMMA, he owns a dispensary. OMMA called him and they had messed up this patient's card, and so directed him in violation of their own rules to take the number off of the email there at the dispensary.
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
And so you can't do that in state government.
Yeah.
You make an exception for one, then it's got to be uniform treatment. So I'm looking through my...
Well, none of us will have to worry about that if 2612 goes into effect, because now, when that goes into effect, it will all be done by mail. There'll be no email in 2 weeks. and everything will be done in the mail, which is already kind of dicey because I've had many people that said that they've lost their card. They got their approval email, mailed their card, and it never showed up in their mailbox. And, mail gets lost, but how do you know to check if it's somewhere in the ether out there,
Yeah, and doesn't part of 2612 also change how long they have to do it?
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
So we've definitely got to fix that.
Well, people will die in the meantime. Honestly,
Right.
they will.
Right. Look, I have no problem with them using the email at the stores. I think that's a great idea, provided they have a second ID too.
Right. You have
Provided
both.
it's legal.
Right.
Just provide, because I know
right.
dispensaries
Yeah.
not far from where I live. I've heard of one that's how they're doing it, and I heard that and was like, no way,
Right.
you got to be kidding.
Yeah,
So I started looking into it.
Yeah, as long as they take
I'm
another.
hearing it's a maybe.
Yeah, as long as they verify with another state-issued type ID. The one that I, talked about, the person I was aware of whose relative took her email wasn't required to show another ID, and that's how she got around it. So I agree with you. If they have the email that in the 24-digit code is entered with another ID, that should be sufficient, especially when they're taking 3 and 4 weeks to get these cards out to people.
Yeah, and they still have to verify it.
Yeah,
They're
still,
not
right.
just looking at
Right.
the email and saying
Right, and ring the number and make
cannabis.
sure it comes back as
Right,
valid.
they're
Correct.
verifying it and then
Yes.
checking that to the ID, to the picture ID. So
Chris, you
that's
probably
good.
have 3 or 4 cards that you can use each time when you go there, right?
No,
Oh,
I just
one?
have the
Oh,
one.
okay.
Just the one. Yeah, I have one that says Uncle Grumpy. No, I don't. I actually do have one. Mine, which I was surprised. I didn't hear that you weren't supposed to smile until after I got mine. So I was shocked that I got mine because
Because
I'm smiling. Yes.
Oh.
Maybe it's just. I realized I was grinning really big. Maybe it's just it appears to be so little because of the beard. I don't know.
Maybe they were so shocked to see Uncle Grumpy smile that they kicked kicked that thing out of
That
there.
may have been it. That
I'm
may have
sorry,
been. We're gonna have to
family-friendly. I'm
we're gonna have to
sorry.
get a button for you, Julie. We're gonna have to
I'm
get a Julie
sorry.
button. That's it.
Sorry.
A red button right here. That's gonna say Julie right there, so I can hit that when she's talking. So Norma, Jon Echols is supposed to stop by here shortly.
I was just looking. It's almost time.
I just heard
Okay.
the door open. I thought,
Uh-huh.
What particular can you think of you want to ask him about? Anything particular, or you just want to nail him on everything?
No, I just want to hear what his interests are. I mean, I know what I'm hearing from the people out there. Their main concerns are, first, the safety-sensitive jobs language. That's their worst complaint. And then now the patient drive thing is real important to all of us in the whole state. It should be. And the taxes, that's a big issue. And I saw a receipt last night on Facebook that showed a guy bought, I think it was like $80-some worth of cannabis product, $85 worth. And he ended up spending a $100 bill by the time the taxes were applied. And
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah, and that's the highest on medicine in the country.
Sure.
And that seems to be.
So I think Jon has a plan for that.
I hope so. I am not quite happy enough with just bringing it down to the same taxes of aspirin because it's not as accessible as aspirin. So why would it be,
True.
it doesn't work.
Well, but I kind of remember we discussed this in the beginning. I think cities should have some tax out of this. There are 3 or 4 cents in some cities because they do have to provide roads to your dispensary or fire protection, and so I think adding a city tax is really a good debatable thing.
It's definitely debatable. Well, we definitely need to at least get it down to the same as every other tax. I mean, the 16-18%
right.
is criminal.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
So, Julie, what about you? What particular thing would you like to ask Jon about that you can think of right now, being put on the spot like this?
Obviously, with Norma, I have concerns about safety sensitive. Also have concerns about some ambiguous terms regarding business licenses. I still, am personally uncomfortable with the provision that allows any physician to go in and see, who has a license. I understand that is done with the PMP if a doctor is prescribing pain medicine. Well, but the language of 2612 is that any doctor someone sees, even if they're not prescribing or recommending medical marijuana, that's kind of good, or, you know, recommending pain medicine, they can still go in under that wording and check all of their patients to see if they have a medical marijuana card. And I don't see the appropriateness of that. I feel like that's a violation of privacy.
If you want to let the doctor know, yes.
Or if they ask because it's somehow related to a condition you have. But, you know, if I'm going to see a doctor because I've got pink eye, there's really no reason for them to, you know, check in to see if I have a medical marijuana card.
Well, as I've stated before, as everybody knows, this will be used to punish people. Pain management doctors will request the information. They'll go through the process. They'll have their assistant go through the process of requesting the information on every patient they have, and then they'll use that to determine whether to continue to treat them or not. And too many will just, that will be it. They'll get letters in the mail that say you're no longer, you're now fired.
Oh, we might bring up, I don't know how to say her last name, Jean Housenhoover.
Oh, I don't.
That's bad.
Well, I don't know who
I don't know
that is.
who either.
She was the head, or still is maybe, of the Oklahoma Medical Association, and she's a eye doctor, right?
Oh, the one from Lawton?
Yes.
Who's absolutely against
Yes,
medical
does not
marijuana?
want to learn about it. Well, now the governor has taken her out of that position and applied her to rural health. Now, not that she wouldn't be good at that. I don't know what her qualifications are, but that's moving some chairs around that might benefit us. Who knows?
Yeah, but we really, well, it's unfortunate to see somebody in healthcare that is so reefer madness.
Well, I know. So maybe he knows that, and he took her out of that position so that the Oklahoma Medical Association can move forward with real instruction. You know, 2612 says they'll be giving classes to doctors on how to comply with the medical marijuana laws.
Right, yeah, my point is only that meanwhile this person will go inflict the reefer madness upon a smaller group with less power that can fight back less and know less about what's
I
going on.
don't know what her job duties are going to be, but she's
Yeah.
been taken out of that position.
Okay. Well, that's
she was
good,
a pain
I'm
in
sure.
our.
That's good for the whole.
Yeah, I
Definitely
think so.
good for the whole.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you say her last name?
I read it. And
I'm
I
sorry,
didn't even. I
Jean,
couldn't
I
even
really
sound
am.
it out as well as you could.
Hey, we have company.
Hey, what we're going to do
we
now,
got a
listen, hang
celebrity.
on here. What we're going to do is we're going to take a short break, and our fearless floor leader, Jon Echols, has arrived. We're going to take a break and bring him on camera. Give us about, 5 to 10 minutes. We're going to get him prepped, beat him up a little bit, and get him ready for this. And we're going to come back and hit him with, we'll call it a lightning round. We're going to drill him for about 30 minutes with all the questions we
He's
can come up with.
he's a lawyer. He can take it.
He can. All right, we'll see you shortly. Stay grumpy. We'll be right back.
It won't be.
In the summer of 2018, despite a fierce and well-financed opposition, the state of Oklahoma passed State Question 788, giving the citizens the most open medical marijuana system in the U.S.
The people of Oklahoma spoke last night, and they said they wanted medical marijuana.
Critics tried to frame 788 as being too loosely written, pointing to the bill's lack of qualifying conditions. Proponents countered that the bill would allow maximum access to the widest range of patients. State Question 788 passed by more than 13 points. My friends call me Grumpy. I'm a citizen lobbyist on the front lines of the cannabis revolution in the great state of Oklahoma. I represent not only the 507,000 individuals that voted for medical cannabis, but my fellow citizens who need this medicine. Join us as we travel the state to meet with politicians, activists, business owners, but most importantly, patients.
Okay, everybody, it's Uncle Grumpy, and we are back, and we are being joined by our fearless floor leader, Representative Jon Echols, and of course, Julie Ezell and Norma Sapp. John, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. I appreciate you not just being a guest and our representative, but being a friend. I appreciate that a lot.
Appreciate you, Chris. Thanks.
We brought you here to beat you up pretty good. We have a lot of questions. I think everybody out there does. We know that everything that came over from the Senate is now what you guys are now looking at, is getting ready to go through your committees. Everything you guys finished up with has now gone over to the House.
Yes.
Now, we're not pleased with everything you've sent over, but we're certainly more pleased with that, with what went that direction, than what we are with what's come this direction. So for what we have, the time we have you today, what we want to address is what you're about to address.
Okay.
Everything that you're going to be looking at this week. And those that watch enough know we went over some of this last week. We did a show with myself and Norma and Lawrence where we went down this list. We've got that list here. Everybody has a copy of that. We're just going to attack you with that. Okay?
Let's do it.
We're just going to go over some of that. Julie, was everything on here? I know there was one issue you had asked about before, and I don't remember if it came up on this, so I want to start with that one. And it had to do with some ambiguity and some language.
Oh,
Which one?
that was the same one with the, the health department can revoke commercial licenses for other reasons as deemed appropriate by the department. And then the actions that may take upon, revocation, suspension, or whatever, or they may take other action is deemed appropriate. Is that anything that you guys have looked at for change, or?
It will be. So one of these Senate bills will go back to the Senate with some language that changes that to any other violation of the act. So one of these Senate bills, I don't know which one it is yet, but just like I amended, put amendments on 3 of the bills to fix the MDDO issue, to fix the whether a doctor could look up a patient, and then fixed an issue, a business issue that would have made it where basically our third-party providers would have to have been out of state. We put that amendment on 3, or I put that amendment on 3 different House bills. We'll probably grab more than one of these Senate bills and put an amendment on there that fixes that.
Okay, now this list starts off, we're not going to read the whole list again, but 162 we've got marked as good, but 305, Norma, you mentioned that earlier. I think both of you have, but Norma, you want to address that, the safety sensitive?
Well, there's several of them that have the safety sensitive language in it. And I spoke to the Women Can Association on Friday night. That was the one major thing that they all mentioned. And I get all kinds of comments and messenger messages all day long that's the main complaint. I spent $300 or whatever dollars to have my card and protect me, and now my job is in jeopardy. And of course, I know this sounds right, but quit your job and go get a cannabis job. It pays better anyway.
Well, and I have to say, like, from a practical standpoint, I understand what it's trying to accomplish. I just don't think that testing, like, as you know, testing right then doesn't tell if they're impaired right then. What are your thoughts on that?
The problem we have is science is not caught up to it. I mean, it's very different. I explain this to people all the time, and again, I don't pretend to be an expert on this. I jokingly say I know more than anyone else in the legislature, but they all know nothing. So we're in the process of learning. Anybody that's into the last, I'm not saying anything anybody didn't know. If you attended the last meeting of the bicameral committee, it was clear I didn't like the safety sensitive job language because I kept offering amendments till I started losing votes. So I amended it until I started losing votes on taking jobs. I'm reasonable. If somebody wants to talk about literally the act of operating heavy machinery, and I'll say some stuff people don't like I'm okay with that. I'm okay if you want to do CDL licenses, only because that's a federal requirement anyway. So whether we do it or not, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But we've got some stuff in there that deals with dealing pharmaceuticals, like dealing with drugs or dealing in the healthcare industry. Well, that to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So what you're going to see happen with the safety sensitive jobs is we are going to send over, I'm going to have some amendments that changes the safety sensitive job, sends it over to the Senate. I got to be careful though. So let's start with the global view on this. So there are 2 types of amendments. There's amendments that I'm drafting and I'm sending over to the Senate because I think they're going to pass and I think they're going to make the bills, the world better. And then there are other essentially statement amendments that have no chance of passing the Senate, that aren't going to go anywhere. And where the strategy comes in, and Chris, you and I talk strategy all the time, and we talk it offline, where the strategy comes in is making sure I don't put statement amendments that I know are DOA in the Senate in the same bill as some amendments that we really want passed, that we really want, that we want to make happen. And that's where a lot of the strategy comes in. That's why you'll see my name. I think of all these, I'm probably the House author on at least 12 medical marijuana.
Yeah, you're on the majority of them.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that I like them. It just means that I want to control them.
Yeah.
Chris, can I jump in here real quick? I don't think a lot of people watching realize, I've seen Representative Echols be the target of a lot of, criticism.
That's okay.
He doesn't make all the rules. He has to make one that he can get enough people to agree with, and it's always a negotiation game.
Yeah.
So to direct it straight at this guy, I mean, he's on our side. He's trying to make a, robust, helpful, medical program. But it's, as we all know, you have to give a little to take a little, and that's how it works.
While I agree with you, for this 30 minutes, no, he's
that
the
doesn't
bad
make sense.
guy.
I'm okay with that.
He can't fix our problems.
I'm
and
pretty
if he
tough.
can't fix our problems, we're going to let him know we have an issue with
That's
that.
right.
So we'll be nice to him later.
I can take it, brother. I'm good.
I know you can.
That's
I know you can. Look, the issue I have with the safety-sensitive jobs, I don't care how you package it or what bill you hide it in. This is the wording that came out of the lady from the Chamber of Commerce last year that spoke at this committee. This idea that she believed that anybody who ever tested positive for THC in her mind, was impaired. Because they tested positive, that meant they were impaired. And that seems to be what we've ended up here with. We've eliminated the protections that came along with 788 for employees. And I understand, well, what's it matter? We're in a right to work state anyway. They can fire you for no reason. And all I can say to that is, well, then wasn't that good enough for them? If they could fire us for any reason anyway, why did they have to go through the trouble of sticking it to us on the way out the door? And I apologize for what I'm saying there. But as you say, it's a right to work state anyway. They could fire us for no reason. Why do they have to write in a rule for another reason to fire us?
You're not going to get me to defend the safety-sensitive jobs language.
Okay.
I mean, I guess,
All right, well, I'll bring Scott Pickett on. He'll defend the government on what?
It's like, to me, industry legal protection against a suit is just better laid out. And I mean, if I was their lawyer, I would push something like that too.
The problem is where they got it all wrong, and it's because, and it is the state chamber's language. It's exactly the state chamber's language.
Right.
I told them ahead of time that I was going to tell everybody that's where the language came from. They know that. I'm not hiding from it.
We're in the meeting.
We heard their language in this. Where they've messed all this up, though, honestly, this needs to come up in a work comp discussion, not in, and that's why I tried to get them to go. I kept saying, let's set up some certainty for both employees and employers in the work comp scenario. Well, because honestly, and the other problem is you have some businesses that aren't nearly as protected with this language. My biggest beef from the employer perspective with safety sensitive language is it's the wrong way to do it. And I've been screaming that from the hilltops.
Well, but what do you mean? What do you mean? Take it to the workman's comp part?
Yeah. So here's what I mean by that. Here's the real issue. The real issue is when there's an injury on the job, if you're intoxicated on the job, then you lose your workman's comp benefits because you're not supposed to be intoxicated on the job. What we should have set up is a series of rules to determine intoxication, which can't be done by a blood test or an alcohol test or hair test because that doesn't determine intoxication. We could set up, which we, by the way, have had for 50 years prior to having tests like we have them now for alcohol, a series of tests to know whether or not somebody, just because they had a card, should be immaterial as to whether or not they're
You mean
injured.
a cognitive test?
Yes, exactly. And that's the way we did. And if they would have set that up, that actually would have been better for everyone. That would have been better for employees and for employers. It would have been fair.
Yeah, that's what Lawrence Pasternak's been screaming about for a while. He's even written language. He's even written words to fit that in there.
Problem is we don't have enough politicians that have been either employers or employees, quite frankly, that have been in the private sector at all. I mean, I both, good and bad, have been both. I've had employees, I've had employers. When you've done that, what you want is certainty, and you want to be fair to your people. That's the beef I have with this language. The other problem is, so let's say I'm a healthcare professional, because that's one of the ones it applies to. So let's say I'm Mercy, and I'm going to take the position that if you have a card that you can't work for me. LPNs and RNs are like gold. When you find one that is good, you have to hang on to them because there is a massive shortage. There's also a large amount of LPNs and RNs that have gone out and got cards. Right. So they are faced with one of two choices because of this language. I'm actually arguing, and I've already argued with the state chamber, why this is bad for business.
Right.
That now, because we didn't set up a system where we could actually talk about impairment, we've set up this cut and dry. We're allowing you either yes card or no card. Right. So what are they going to do? Are they going to say everyone that has a card that doesn't work for me can't work for me anymore? Well, that's not possible because they need those nurses. I mean, they need them. There's a shortage of them. Or are they going to cut and pick and choose? Well, if they pick and choose, lawyers like the one over here are going to sue them and they're going to win. I mean, the problem I have with this language is it's bad on every level. Like it doesn't help employers. Now, I can argue the employee side nonstop. So that's why I said I'm trying to be reasonable when I say, okay, CDLs. I mean, one of my best friends in the world drives for UPS. He's super frustrated. He's come to me, he's a constituent, fix the CDL issue. I can't fix the CDL issue. That's a federal issue.
Right.
There's nothing I can do about it. What I'm going to try to do is chip away, but every chance I get, I'm going to shout from the heavens that this is just the wrong way to do it. Mm-hmm. The right way to do it is what Lawrence talked about. Let's come up with some other test to determine impairment, and that's fair for everybody.
There's a software program you can put in place, yes.
Exactly.
Is there a bill that deals with workman's comp or insurance
Well,
that we could fit some language into?
Well, there are 12 bills that deal with medical marijuana from the Senate that don't have a germaneness rule. So
So we can expect to see some changes,
you
some
can.
changes in that area.
I don't know that they're going to pass, though. I mean, I go back from the very beginning. I think you're going to see language come out of the House that's going to have some changes in that area. I don't know that they have a strong chance of passing.
You know, if that doesn't get straightened out, I can assure you that a lot of senators are shortening their political career.
You know me, that's not my style, but I know it's yours, and that's okay.
That's what I'm here for.
All I can
I'm
say
here
is
for.
what I think and what I think and there's a good question should be, so a good question would be, why did I agree to it, given that fact pattern? Because at the end of the day, I was fighting so many more important issues, because we are a right-to-work state. I don't like it. I think it's bad. I don't know that it has the effect that some of the other issues I won on would have had that effect. And that's why that was one I felt like I could compromise. Because if you fire someone under this and you're a business owner, you're an idiot. There's a million ways to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no
That's
reason
why
this
I'm
should ever
saying,
happen.
why did they
It's
have to
pointless.
do it? If it's so easy to fire someone anyway, why did they need to be so hateful?
I think it's
why?
people that
It's
they
just-
don't understand.
No.
They still
Like,
don't
clearly they
understand, and they still there's just still so much misinformation.
Correct.
I mean, so much misinformation.
Okay, well, I want to move us forward on this. So what I want to move forward to now is packaging.
Okay.
You look like you were about to say
Oh,
something there. Do you want something you want to throw in?
I wanted to ask about the tax issue, but go to packaging.
No, go ahead. Let's do the tax issue.
You know, is there any plan to further address what they're now calling the excise tax versus the charging of sales tax, or where do you see that going?
So there is. So here's what people got to understand with the tax issue. I got to start off with this. We're part of something called the Streamlined Sales Tax.
This is what you mentioned in that little video we did outside your
Yes.
your what rules committee meeting.
Yes, and it's super
and I
complicated.
had no idea where that came from. It was like suddenly a Hail Mary he threw to save him from getting in major trouble there.
No, so let me
So
tell you.
explain
Let me
this,
tell you what it
please.
means. What it means is, with very limited exceptions, if the state charges sales tax on something, cities get to charge sales tax on something. So that is very, very limited exceptions, but that's what the Streamlined Sales Tax Agreement says. It's a multi-state agreement. It will cost us hundreds of $millions if we break it. So we're not going to do that. So here are your options when it comes. Yes, taxes will be addressed, but here are your options. Your options are, number one, just get rid of any form of sales tax whatsoever and say it's a 7% excise tax only. That's DOA in the
Yeah,
Senate. I mean, and that means the cities can charge nothing. Your other option is get rid of the 7% excise tax completely, charge some level of state sales tax. That's going to have to be a negotiated number, but that means the cities can charge their sales tax.
So you're talking about coming down from the 7%.
Yes.
Okay, that's workable.
Yes.
I can understand that. I can
And we
work
will
with
do that in a Senate bill. We will do that. One of these bills will end up sending back to the Senate, and I think it'll pass. Like, I think this is one of those where it's not a statement bill. I think everyone is on board with lowering that tax.
Well, now, Paxton in the
Everyone's
Senate put forward a bill to allow the state to take the 7% and to allow the cities to take what they wanted, but to not allow the state to take any more than the 7%.
And even that would be a lowering of what it is now, though.
Well,
so
sure,
even Paxton's
yeah.
bill would be lower than what it is. The issue is, because he would define that, that needs to be, whatever percentage the state takes needs to be defined as a sales tax.
Right, but what that does, though, is that brings it down to, 11 to 13%, depending on where in the state you're at. Still higher than any other sales
I
tax.
agree.
And, as I like to point out, I hate having to do it, but love to point it out, the highest taxes on medicine in the country.
I agree. So you have a couple options on this. So this is where we go back to a statement or something that will lower it and make it cheaper for everybody. I think what would pass for sure is 7% state tax plus city sales tax. So let's say your total is going to be in the neighborhood of 11, 12% as opposed to the 18, sometimes 18% that it is now. I think that's your worst case scenario. That could pass. The question is, how much further can you negotiate that 7% from the state side down. And by you, I mean me. But
Right.
how much further can I negotiate?
I think it can't be any higher than, I don't think we can accept it any higher than standard sales tax. If look, this was mentioned to
makes
me
a lot of
as
sense.
aspirin.
lot of
This was
sense.
called aspirin by more than one of your,
Yes.
the people you work with in that building. In
Don't
conversations
make me
with
own all
me,
of them, though.
in conversations with me, they called it aspirin and said, you tax aspirin. Okay, so don't tax it any more than aspirin.
Yeah.
So if you can get it down from there.
The answer is yes. I mean, I have no issue just changing the whole thing to a sales tax. I want to, and maybe we send that over in 2 bills. What makes me nervous is just sending that without an agreement with the Senate,
Right.
and then nothing passes. I mean,
All right,
nothing.
well, we definitely got to work on that
Is there a
one.
general agreement with them that the sales tax issue needs to be addressed, do you think?
Yes, generally,
Generally,
yes.
yes,
Generally,
okay.
yes. Now, the specifics of it are where you
Gotcha.
get, but I agree that there is general agreement that they need to. I've been pretty open about it. I would go to a 7% total, 3.5 state, 3.5 city, be fine with me.
Mm-hmm.
So consider that like the floor. Consider
would
the
be
11,
good. That would be good.
the
Where we only pay
ceiling.
7 at the door, that would be good.
I'd be
As
okay with that.
intended,
Yeah.
that would be crazy.
Right.
That's what we voted
3 to 5
for.
apiece, and we 3
That would
5
just
state,
be
3 5
nuts. That's
city.
what we voted for.
Now, and what I have to look at is, do I just send that bill over without an agreement and risk sticking at 18, or do I compromise somewhere in between? I can't tell you for sure what I'm going to do on that, because there's still a lot of legislation
But we've
left.
only got 2 weeks to figure it out, right?
Well, I've got 2 weeks to get it out of, no, I've got 2 weeks to get it, 3 weeks to
3
get it
weeks.
out of committee,
Okay.
and then 2 weeks on the floor, so I got 5 weeks.
Okay, all right.
5 weeks before stuff's got to go back over to the Senate.
Okay, so it's not going to be quite as fast as it was
That's
last
more breathing
time.
room.
That's good.
Yeah, be about 5 weeks.
I might see my dog a couple times this month. I don't know.
I hope so.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about packaging. Packaging and advertising, they kind of are tied together. That is, let's see, 755 and 756. This opaque packaging, I mean, it's okay if this is what the exit bag, but unless I'm hearing this wrong, this is every bag on every shelf.
So I think the way the packaging is now, it is every bag on every shelf. I think there's probably a prior restraint, free speech problem with the packaging the way it is now. I don't think, and what prior restraint, free speech means, you're not allowing somebody freedom of speech before they speak. So I think when you're talking about no advertisement to children, no superheroes, no stuff like that, I think you're fine.
Yeah.
I think when you tell people they can't put their when you can't put their logos on there, I think it's got some issues. I think
Yeah.
there's some problems. Now, from a day-to-day perspective, it's the same rules for everybody. So that's why I was willing to compromise on that issue, because everybody's playing by the same set of rules. But I think you're going to see some movements in packaging to move forward, and at a bare minimum, allow labels and allow trademarks and allow stuff like that on there. If somebody wants to say who they are, then they should get to do that. I also found out, because in my district I do all types of events. One of the events I did at the Pioneer Library System was about 788. I found out for the first time we have some issues with how OMMA is determining packaging. What is packaging? And I didn't know this. That's why I have these events, because I find out stuff for the first
Okay,
time.
so let us in on this. What did you find out?
So one of the things I found out, we got a question from a dispensary, and I guess OMMA is considering it packaging. So you're outside of your dispensary licensing if you, for example, take what's left over in a bag and roll it.
The pre-rolls.
Oh, yeah, the
Yes,
pre-rolls.
we've
So-
had this conversation. They're
Which is
saying you
crazy.
can't do pre-rolls.
No,
Now,
that's not
pre-rolls
packaging.
have to come from a processor.
Yeah,
That's
and
the way everybody's doing it now.
I know it is.
I
but
think
we
it's
need
crazy.
but we need to fix that, because that's not that's not processing. I think
No.
I think in the normal sense of the word, people would not consider that processing. So I've now learned that's a new issue, which again I didn't know about until doing the event in my district and having somebody ask me about it. And luckily I had Blake Johnson beside me, because they asked me the question. It sounded so crazy. I didn't fully understand the question.
Yeah.
It was Blake that said, no, what you saying
Yeah, and
is.
they're liking to use the stuff, those that weigh stuff out in front of you, they want to use what's at the bottom of the jar
Of
and
course.
everything else and turn that into their pre-rolls so they don't end up with waste. And the way I see that, taking out the pre-rolls, that creates waste. That creates a whole nother thing they have to deal
Yeah,
with.
that's something we don't want to talk about
Well,
right
it
now.
creates
do we?
all other problem, and when I was a kid, my parents owned a coffee shop, so that's how we measured out like coffee, or we didn't have prepackaged coffee. We measured it out, we weighed it. We measured out tea and we weighed it. I mean, that was kind of the system, and we would take that tea at the bottom that we sold it in the minimum of half of a pound, so maybe I've only got 2, 3, 4 ounces left. Well, we'd go put that somewhere, and we'd use it when we made our little tea balls. We just had really nice tea that in the little cups, and we'd use that. I mean, to me, that wasn't processing.
Right.
That's not what we were doing.
Right.
I wasn't making new tea. So it just, or changing the consistency of it. So for me, that's another issue we got to deal with, which again, I didn't even know about till yesterday, Thursday.
How do
just
they
4 days
get the
ago.
authority to make up things like that?
Well, I mean, that's any state agency. I mean, the OMMA, when you hear OMMA, hear Department of Health, because for all intents and purposes, they're the same thing. All it is a division
Right.
of the Department of Health. With any regulatory body. Now, I do think they're trying to be more responsive after some missteps. I was very, very hard on the Department of Health. I think they're getting better, and I think they're learning too. I mean, they're learning that they got this thing off the ground faster by triple, actually by an infinitesimal amount than any state in the nation. And it's because the way it was voted for, and it's because people like me wouldn't let politicians go in and delay it, which was what a lot of them wanted to do. But when they did that, I mean, it was hard. I mean, Arkansas voted for medical marijuana 2
Still
years
don't have
prior
it,
to us,
yeah.
and they still don't have it. Our very first lab is an Arkansas lab. So
Yeah, I spoke to somebody yesterday from Missouri that says they have a 1-year delay and a list of conditions, only a handful of conditions, and you have to get 2 doctors to sign off.
And part of the issue is too, we got to remember, I only have so much political capital, and I'm a large reason none of that happened in the state of Oklahoma. But I don't get everything I want. So for some real issues, and I've been real blunt about the issues in 2612 and some other issues that I don't like. The program is still good. The program's the fastest growing medical program in the nation, by far the fastest growing medical program in the nation. We're going to hit what we expected, a full year total, probably this month. It shows no sign of stopping. OMMA is asking me daily, this is not exaggeration, daily to change the 14 days to 30 days that they can do because they literally can't keep up.
They need to hire more people.
Well, and they're
Can
trying.
they? Can
And they're
they?
trying. Well,
They have money.
well, no, they don't, but they will have money. See, all the money that's coming in hasn't been appropriated.
Okay.
Now, we are going to appropriate that money
Okay.
in the budgetary process.
Give them an allowance.
We're going to.
Hire some more people so
We're
we can
going
get
to.
our cars. Look, you and I talked
And we're
last
going to.
summer, and I said
Yep.
something about the expectations for how many patients we would have, and it was being compared to Arizona. And you said at that time
400,000.
we were going to do at that time you said we're going to do everything we can to make sure we get at least 250,000 in
That's
the
right.
first 2 years.
That's right.
And I think we're going to hit that pretty easy.
I do too. I've now said I think we're going to cap out around 400,000. I think that may take 3 years.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to hover right around, because we have a very mature market in Oklahoma, because it's not just because we had a very mature CBD market beforehand. We have a whole lot of people that may not have gotten, if you just went straight to medical marijuana. We have a lot of people that maybe would have not gotten a card if they weren't familiar with CBD and some other cannabinoids. So maybe they don't want something with really, really high THC, but they want some level of THC because they found out whatever the CBD they take at night for their arthritis with a little bit helps. I think that's why we're having such an expansion, because we had a relatively mature market compared to the rest of the nation.
So do you think, and this is the way I'm starting to view it, I'm not even really looking at this as a medical program anymore, but a legal protection program. And if you're talking about getting up to those numbers, you're talking about people that aren't even saying they're using it for medical reasons. They're admitting, I'm going to get my card for legal protection, because this may be the closest we get to adult use or full access in Oklahoma for years. What do you think?
You know, I think we have the largest incarceration rate on the planet. So if that's what it ends up being, I'm okay with it. I mean, I think being number one in incarceration on planet Earth is not a position. You and I know I do a lot on criminal justice reform. So, and I've said this on your show, because of the crime we have, if you're going to use it, go get a card. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no. That's part of but that's part of what made 788 so good. The fees are so low. The barrier is not. And now that we have made it clear, telemed's okay. Doctor costs are going to go down. The card costs are going to go down, or they're not high to begin with compared to some other states. Yeah, I mean, if that's what's happening, or I need to call you Grumpy on the show. If that's why it's happening, then I think that's okay, though. That's one of the big protections. I mean, that's one of the fights that we won so quickly that I think people forget that it was a fight.
Right.
People that wanted to come in immediately and put on qualifying conditions. And I just categorically said, no, that's not what was voted on. That's not what we're going to do. You know, the THC limits, the no smoking. I'm just categorically said, no, we won fights early on that other states, not only did they lose, but that they lost, and then they lost it for years and years and years.
Yeah, again, I speak to activists all over the country where they're having these battles, and they're calling, asking how we do this and how we do that. And in fact, I may be going to some of these states and speaking soon.
You tell them it's because you're good at what you do.
Should be interesting. No, that's not what I said at all.
Well, you have done a good job.
No,
I
it
want you to
wasn't me, it
remember
was
something
everybody.
when they call you and bug you about can we delay it. I lost a friend. He didn't have time from diagnosis to get his card. He passed, and so we're not quick enough right now.
Well, I should have been clear. I'm not going to do it. I mean, I had 3 others.
If
Yeah, but I'm not
there's
going
any way to remind them of that or to hurry this up, you know, my Senator Standridge, talked about there was somebody in hospice that needed it right away.
Yeah.
We need some kind of way to help them.
They need to do it online. We need to appropriate enough money for them to have a software. See, this is a chicken and the egg thing.
Okay.
The best way to do this would be set up a software that automatically reads all of this and has very minimal human involvement, so it's almost an automatic process. Now, what we couldn't do that because they started so fast. Everybody they had, so I explained this at the meeting. They said, why don't they take people they have now and start working on the software? That's taking people away from who are physically reading it. Mm-hmm. So what we need to do is appropriate them some money in order to create the software so they can read it. And that's why I don't want to make it 30 days.
Right.
I agree there's a problem. Like, I am defending them. I agree they have a problem doing it. But the answer is not to make it 30 days. The answer is to give them the money so they can create a system to make it faster. And that's what I think we'll do.
No, we talked a long time ago. In fact, you and I were talking about this a year ago when we also talked about how to eliminate that tax stamp. The hope would be that you could get up in the morning, decide you want to get a medical marijuana card that day, go to a clinic, pay a $50 fee or whatever the fee is, get your piece of paper, leave there, go to the driver's license bureau or another tag agency, and get your card. Now, with the smart IDs or the smart ID, whatever they call it, the federal ID,
Real
we have
IDs.
to change real IDs. We have to get all new equipment for the state. What do we do with all that old equipment? Well, that starts making our cannabis cards.
I started talking about it, you and I did, very early on, and people freaked out about it, wanting to use your DMVs or your tag agents to get your cards. I still think it's a good idea.
It is.
You want to speed up the card process, kick the whole thing to tag agents. We have nothing as efficient as our tag agent system. I mean, look at what they're doing, and because, again, you've got this private sector process there's 300 or 400 of them all over.
Yeah, okay,
all
but
over.
they're talking tag agencies, not DMV.
No, tag agents.
Okay,
No, that's the perfect example, though. Think about the process of getting your driver's license test at the DMV,
Right.
public sector, to going to get your driver's license at your tag agent, private sector. I mean, if we could kick it over, that would make so much more sense. The tag agents not everyone feels the way I do about tag agents. There's a few that they take away government money, not by me, and they want to not increase tag agent power. My deal is, if we were to kick it over to tag agents, it would be so much faster. So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, they don't have the laminate right now to get your cards. Your cards are taken, which is a real problem because they're printing so many.
Yeah.
But that's the government for you. I mean, again, I'm in the
Don't have
government.
the laminate.
Through bidding and
Should
all
we?
that.
Could you guys help us? We're going to round up some laminate.
telling you.
Deliver to the health
I
department.
found that out. I found that out
Drop
last
off some
week, too.
truckloads of laminate tomorrow at the health department. That would
Yes.
just be hysterical.
And the
Yes,
tag
it's
agents
up
would
there.
make so much more sense.
Yeah. Tag agency is a great idea.
Well, I agree, Connie. Thank you. So I'm pushing for it hard, and I think if we could find a way
It's not
to
fair. You can see that.
I
Screen and I can't. We'll have to work on it next time.
If we could find a way to get that done, I think the process would be faster. Because I think for people, Grumpy, you and I have talked about this. I don't care if it's for medicine, if they're doing it for legal protection, if whatever they're doing. I mean, if you're getting high and hurting other people, I got an issue with that.
Right.
If you're not, I don't care.
Right.
So I mean, that's what I think we need to find a way to do more.
Okay, so it is getting kind of late. I know we don't have you all night, and believe it or not, I actually have places to be too.
Good for you.
Shocking.
Yeah, I know. So I want to get to 10:30. It was the longest of them. I'm not going to go over all of it. It's on the second page.
Okay.
In fact, it is the second page. Maybe you don't have
You didn't
that.
get one.
You didn't get
Right,
that
that's
page.
right.
Sorry.
Is this Cinnabon?
Anyway,
Okay.
this one just seems to be what they threw everything in that they could think of that was like the worst possible. How do we inflict this program with the most issues? And let's put it all in one bill. So could we possibly maybe see the number 1030 disappear?
Am I the house author on this bill too, I hope?
I think
Paxton. Oh, house author. I don't know.
Sure, it'd be easier if I was. So going through this real quick. So, like, for example, non-licensed possession is a $400 misdemeanor. The bill that's going to pass is my bill that makes it a $400 ticketable offense. Gets the misdemeanor stuff away. So it's not even a misdemeanor anymore. I think what I would tell you, I mean, no, we're not going to. The answer is no, we're not going to do any of this stuff. It's not going to pass the House. But I wouldn't get too hung up on bill numbers, though. There's no germaneness rule in Senate bills, so these things will be working very, very closely with the Senate and figuring out where we can have some agreement to move this state forward. I don't know Senator Paxton's. The other thing I want to make sure people understand with Senate bills, I don't know Senator Paxton's district. But sometimes when you hear a bill filed by a senator or a representative that may just sound crazy, just nuts. How can they do that? I would remind people, I mean, I'm an urban Republican, which makes me kind of a unicorn because there's not a lot of us left in urban areas. But the other thing is that's very different than a, say, panhandle Republican.
Right.
When Senator Murdoch filed his bill, former House member, dear friend of mine, I love Casey Murdoch, a lot of fun, good guy. But when he filed his bill making a county option, and I immediately came out and said, we are never doing that. That is never happening. I called Casey, Senator Murdoch, make sure he wasn't mad, and just said, hey, listen, I'm not trying to tick you off, but we just not ever do that. And Casey was real blunt. He was like, I'm representing my people, John. That's where they were. So just because somebody files something or if somebody made it over the House, all of these are title off, by the way, which means they weren't even live rounds. They're just keeping them around. That doesn't mean it's going to become law. There's still a whole lot of...
Well, my concern isn't with the Senate numbers of the bills, I can assure you. My concern is with the language, and I'll tell you why specifically. Some bills that were Senator McCourtney's bills, where he took the title off of them in the Rules Committee, and they sat, are now in 2612. The same language.
Well, that's probably
Okay,
true.
and he said, I'll pull the language off of I'll pull the title off of these as long as we get what I need. He told us myself and another constituent in a meeting, he was taking the language off of those because this would happen another way, and it came through in 2612. So I'm not concerned about the number 1030 so much.
It's more the
as
ideas.
What's written in 1030, and I don't want to see it pop up again. So
I don't think you
concerned about that. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up pretty soon, but I want to ask you, you have any last questions before John?
No.
Any last issues you want to harass him about?
I'll answer them.
Nothing?
No.
Okay, I do. I turned in some language on caregiver
Sure did.
language. Where are we at with that, and can we see some movement on that?
It will end up on one of these. You, Lawrence Pasternak, and Representative Fricks worked incredibly hard on the caregiver language. I think the whole caregiver statute needs to be rewritten, and you've done that. And we've got some great stuff. I want to give Representative Fricks credit. I mean, he worked really hard on that. So one of these bills, I don't know which one, will end up with that caregiver language in it and sent back over. I mean,
Okay.
it's good language.
Okay, now I understand Scott Fettgetter, Representative Fettgetter, is helping you out a lot. He's
He
stepping in
is.
a lot of places. So perhaps we can talk to him about getting him on the show real soon, and we can do this to him.
I would love that. Guys, I will tell you, if it wasn't for Representative Fettgetter, I mean, we got Avery Fricks because I was literally begging you for help.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'd do without Representative Fatgetter, because in addition to doing a lot of the 788 stuff, I still have to be floor leader, which takes a whole lot of time. But Scott's been wonderful. I mean, Scott and I don't agree on everything, and that means I'm not always right, so that's a good thing. But he really has worked hard on this.
Yes,
Yes,
he
he
has.
has.
He's worked very hard, and I'm lucky to have him on the team.
He did a good job of debating the bill 2612 on the floor, and
did.
coming this far in such a short time. He really was cannabis ignorant when he started out.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, I met with him a year ago, and we actually had an argument the first time we sat down together.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think, and when you have a guy like Scott, who represents Fatgetter, who cares? I mean, Representative Fatgetter is just trying to do the right thing. I mean, he's another one. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't. Hey, I'm not a cannabis user. Scott Fatgetter's not a cannabis user. We've got to get educated. It's
Right.
people that are doing it just because they want what's best for the state.
Right.
They want to do their job. And man, I got ultimate respect, because I got a whole bunch of members who I won't say their names, who just run from this issue. I mean, just want nothing to do with it. I can't get any help from them.
You know, Representative Fatgetter mentions frequently how he was in a hairband back in the 80s.
He was.
I want to see some pictures of that. So if we could track some of that down.
Hey, I'll say this right here. If you ever get to hear Scott Fatgetter sing AC/DC, you will not think it's him. It is unbelievable.
That's great.
It is incredible.
That's great.
So I'm telling him,
What a deal.
Scott, if you're watching this, you need to come on and sing for him.
All right.
So, no, he starts going. I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
All right.
No, he has got a voice, man. He has got a
That's
voice.
good. I'm shocked.
He is good.
I'm shocked. He's got a voice for radio, right?
He does have a voice
Face for radio.
but he's good.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank our fearless floor leader, Jon Echols, Julie Ezell from Canna Law Group here in Oklahoma City, and of course, longtime activist Norma Sapp for being here for another great show. I want to thank all the sponsors for helping us do this. If it wasn't for sponsors, we wouldn't be able to do it. That's it for tonight. Until tomorrow, stay grumpy. I'll see you on the road.